Okay, so good day. So supposed to be we're going to discuss your answer for our YouTube quiz, but it so happened that meron pa sa inyo na hindi nakakapag-take ng exam, so better not to discuss the answer now. Okay, so before we begin, as our reminders, okay, please, we call this, comment your name and your section for your attendance. Okay, so this will be our recorded YouTube discussion. Okay, so second to the last topic that we will discuss for this day. Okay, don't forget to comment your name and your section. Doon ako mag-base ng attendance ngayon. Okay, so is all about our topic for the third grading, week 5. It's all about heat. As you notice, we're done with the light. We're done with that. So we're now on the week 5 tayo. Okay? So for our most essential learning competencies, so at the end of the session, you must be able to, first, you have to explain how heat is transferred between object or places. Okay? Second, we have to compare the different modes of heat transfer. Okay? So for our specific objective. Okay, first we have to define each mode of heat transfer. So at the end of this session, you must able to define the different modes of heat transfer. Paano ba na-transfer si heat? Ano-ano ba yung ways? Okay? Number 2, we have to identify factors which affect the heat transfer. Lastly, we have to give examples of each mode of heat transfer. Now, I have your simple activity wherein you have to identify if the given object is hot or cold. So, it's very easy activity. Okay? So, this activity, yung first picture about coffee, medyo umuusok-usok pa yan. Is it hot or cold? Definitely, it is hot. Kasi may smoke pa siya. Okay? For our second picture, ito talaga yung mga madaming added dito. Okay? So, what about milk tea? Is it hot or cold? Definitely it's cold. What about the soup here? Chicken noodle soup here. I don't know. Chicken noodle soup ba yan? Basta soup. Okay. Is it hot or cold? Definitely it's hot. And last yan. Basta tuloy. Si dancing ice cream natin is it's cold. Okay. So the degree of hotness and coldness of a certain substance, we call that one as a temperature. Okay. So, this is temperature. Medyo nagkamali na tayo na typographically error. Nagkabalpad si A at si R. So, it should be temperature. So, we define temperature scientifically or objective. If we're going to define it in science term, so we say that temperature is the degree of hotness and coldness of an object. Okay? Kung gaano raw kalamig or gaano kainit yung isang object, we refer to that as temperature. And always remember that temperature is measured using thermometer. Okay, actually, so nowadays we use the digital thermometer, but during the earlier time, during my time, in siguro mo, your parents' time, ang ginagamit kasi namin is your mercury. Okay, kasi si mercury is solid at room temperature, pero pag nainitan siya, nagiging liquid. Yung tumataas yung ginagawa yung sinisipat-sipat ng mga magulang dati. Pero so happen that mercury pinagbabawal na kasi it's poisonous chemical. So kaya ginawa na siyang digital. Okay? Now, the SI unit or the standard unit of temperature is Kelvin, which is equivalent to 273.15 degrees Kelvin or 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, so that is the unit in measuring the amount of temperature or the rate of the temperature. Okay, so what about heat? Okay, heat is opposite around or different. When we say heat is a form of energy associated with the motion of particles and capable of being transmitted through solid, liquid, media, either by conduction, by convection, or radiation. So heat is a form of energy. Remember that heat is a form of energy. To be specified, it is a form of thermal energy. Okay, so heat, sabi dyan, is always associated with the motion of particles. So how the particles move, it's something to do with the formation of heat. So if the particle increase or the molecule increase the kinetic energy, ito yung sinasabi natin nung nakaraan, okay? So kapag mabilis or kapag tumaas ang kinetic energy or the energy in motion ng mga molecule, tumataas din ang energy, lalong umiinit, okay? So that heat, sabi dyan, the heat either can be transmitted through conduction, by convection, or radiation. I-discuss natin yung mamaya. Okay, next. So, heat is a thermal energy. Sabi ko na kanina, heat is a form of energy. Okay? So, specifically, it is a thermal energy. Sometimes, thermal energy is also called as heat energy. So, heat energy is produced when the rise in temperature causes atoms and molecules to move faster and collide with each other. Sabi ko nga kanina, as our example, for example, papakulo kayo ng takore. Okay? And then, you will notice, di ba nagkakaroon ng bubbles? And then, after a few minutes, tumataas na yung pinaka-cover nung takore. So, ibig sabihin nun, so habang tumataas yung takore, nagbo-boil. Nag-create ng more gas. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, the molecules are moving very, very fast. And the molecules collide with each other. Kaya tumataas yung kinetic energy. So, pag mataas ang kinetic energy, it means mataas ang thermal energy. So, ibig sabihin, pag mataas ang thermal energy, the temperature is very high, mainit. Okay? Because, as I said, the molecules are moving very fast to the extent that it collide with each other. So, forming or creating more or higher energy. And, if the temperature measured or have a standard unit of Kelvin or Celsius, so si heat naman, it's measured through joules. Since we are talking about energy. Okay? May counter niyan during your physics time. Okay? Always remember that heat is measured by joules. Okay, heat. Okay. I have here, sabi, na-discuss natin kanina. Okay, the more na nagumagalaw ng mas mabilis yung isang object, the more na mataas din ang kanyang kinetic energy. So, pag medyo mabagal, ibig sabihin, or yung mabilis, ibig sabihin mainit. Okay? Kasi nag-move very fast. On the other time around, yung isa naman na mabagal, ibig sabihin the temperature is lower, the kinetic energy is lower, and the energy also lower. So, I have here time 1 and time 2, or more thermal energy referring to how heat substance is. So, less thermal energy, medyo mabagal. So, sabihin malamig. Okay? So, what does it indicate? Okay? So, as the molecules move very fast, kung ang molecules like this one, gumagalaw siya na mas mabilis, ibig sabihin nun, the kinetic energy of this object is higher. Kapag ang molecules gumagalaw ng mas mabilis, ang kinetic energy niya or energy in motion niya is very high. So kapag mataas ang kinetic energy niya, the thermal energy itself is very high. So therefore, the temperature is high or hot. Okay? I repeat, if the molecules move very fast, like in our example, the kinetic energy is higher. So when we say kinetic energy, it is the energy in motion, paggalaw. Mabilis na paggalaw ng isang bagay, we can refer to that as kinetic energy. So if the kinetic energy is higher, therefore, the thermal energy is also higher. The temperature of the substance is high or it is hot. Opposite around, in our less thermal energy, it means the molecules move slow. So, if sabihin, our kinetic energy lower, our temperature is lower, thermal energy is lower also, so therefore our temperature is low or slightly cold, malamig. Okay? So, if you notice, kapag mabilis ang molecule, mainit. Kapag medyo slow ang movement ng molecule, ang object na yun is malamig. Okay, so when the temperature of an object increases, the particles that compose the object begins to move faster. That is the reason why, if you notice, since ito yung red, indication niya ng temperature. So, it indicates the amount of temperature. If you notice, mas mataas itong pangatlo. So, therefore, the molecule moves very fast. Sabi nga natin, okay, as the object increase, as the temperature increase, the particle that compose the object begins to move faster. Then either vibrate more rapidly, rotate with greater frequency, or move through space with greater speed. Okay? So that is the reason why kung bakit sila mabilis. Because mataas ang kanilang kinetic energy and it vibrates more. Okay, so mabilis nila na-transfer yung energy from one molecule to another, kaya mas mataas ang kanyang temperature. Okay, so in our case, ang pinakamabagal natin is this one. Siya kasi yung pinakamababa. If you going to analyze the molecules, yung molecules ito mabagal. Okay, ito medyo slight, nag-move fast, pero mas mabilis is ito. Kapag mataas ang temperature, mas mabilis na mag-move ang molecules. Okay, so the higher the temperature of an object, the greater the tendency of the object to transfer the heat. Okay, for the heat to transfer, kailangan niya ng high temperature. Okay, so the lower temperature of object, the greater the tendency of that object to be on the receiving end of the heat transfer. Of course, kung sino yung mas mababa, siya yung mag-receive. Kasi ang movement ng heat is from high temperature to a low temperature. Like for this one, like for example, okay, you have your hand and then you have the ice cube. Okay, we all know already that yung hand natin mainit. Tapos yung ice cube malamig. So ano ang movement? From high temperature going to a lower temperature. Sabihin, nagme-melt yung init ng kamay, i-absorb yan. So, i-absorb yan nung ice cube since siya ay lower in temperature. Kasi ang movement nga, always remember, the heat transfer from warmer temperature to a cooler temperature. So, yung mainit, for example, nagkape ka. Okay? Hiniwanan mo yung what do you call this? Metal spoon. So, we all know already yung kape mainit. So, metal spoon is somewhat malamig pa. So, if you're going to go back again, bumalik ka, and then you will notice pag hinanawakan mo yung metal spoon, medyo mainit. Because, nag-transfer na yung heat from warm, which is sa kape, going to the cooler temperature, which is nasa, what do you call this? Spoon, metal spoon. Basta ang movement ng heat is from higher temperature to a lower temperature. Si higher temperature yung magbibigay, magta-transfer ng heat. Kung sino yung mababa ang temperature, siya na yung mag-receive ng heat. Okay? That is how the heat flows. Okay? So, for our YouTube quiz, you have to remember the hep. Okay? You have, let's remember, so we're going to write hep or hooray. So, write hooray if the statement is correct and hep if the statement is wrong. So, I will give you time. So, as I said, isulat muna sa notebook bago i-transfer sa link na ibibigay ko mamaya. Okay? Number 1, the measure of coldness and hotness of an object is known as temperature. Is it hep or hooray? Number 2, heat is simply the transfer of energy from one object to a colder, from hot object to a colder object. Is it hep or hooray? Number 3, conduction, convection, and radiation are the 3 ways to transfer heat. Is it hep or hooray? Number 4, heat cannot be transferred in many ways. Okay, hindi lang natin pwede transfer. So, limited lang daw yung pag-transfer ng heat. Is it true or false? Or hep or hooray? For number 5, temperature is measured in Kelvin or Celsius. Is it hep or hooray? Number 6, heat is measured by thermal energy. Hep or hooray? Number 7, heat is measured by joules. Is it hep or hooray? Number 8, no heat transfer with the object that are the same in temperature. Kapag pareho daw ba ng temperature, kapag daw pareho ang temperature, wala daw na transfer na heat. 9, decrease in temperature means that the object is getting hotter. If bumababa daw yung temperature, ibig sabihin daw, yung isang object ay umiinit. And lastly, heat is a form of energy. It's hep or radiate. So, I will give you time to answer, and then you have to write it in your notebook first, and then you have to, to transfer it in our Google Form link to be sent in your respective GC. Okay. So, sabi natin, how does the heat transfer? So, always remember that heat always move from warmer substance to a cooler substance. So, lagi munang sa mainit, yung mainit na substance going to a cooler substance. And always remember that the warmer substance are the one who give the heat. And the cooler substance are the one who receive the heat. So, that is the logic. Okay, I have here example of heat transfer. So, heat is a thermal energy is transferred from one object to another when the object are at different temperature. So, magkakaroon lang ng transfer of heat if two objects have different temperature. So, walang heat transfer if pareho sila ng temperature. Kasi hindi naman po-flow. So, always remember, ang heat transfer occur if the two objects have different temperature. So, other object has high temperature or mainit, and the other object has lower temperature or mainit. Okay? For example, number 1, when ironing a shirt, the iron is hot and the heat is transferred to the shirt. So, therefore, meron tayong heat transfer. So, we know already ang init nang gagaling sa plancha. Yung malamig na part is the shirt. So, yung init na galing sa plancha will transfer to the shirt since siya ay lower temperature. As I said, heat transfer from hot substance to a colder substance. Since ang pinakamainit ay si iron, siya yung magta-transfer ng heat going to the shirt. Kasi yung shirt is malamig. Another. Okay, heat is transferred only when two objects are in different temperatures. So, yun yung sabi natin kanina. Okay, in our example, for number 2, yung ice cube. Sabi natin, the ice cube will melt if you hold it in your hand. Okay, the heat is being conducted or transferred from your hand into the ice. So, we know already that our body, we are warm-blooded person. So, mainit ang katawan natin. So, if we're going to hold the ice or cube ice, yung init sa kamay will transfer doon sa ice tube. Kaya siya nag-melt. Okay? Sabi nga natin kanina that the heat transferred only when two objects are in different temperature. So, kapag magkaiba ang temperature, isa mainit, isa malamig, so doon nagkakaroon ng heat transfer. Always remember that the heat transfer by high temperature going to a low temperature. Mainit, pupunta siya dun sa malamig. So, that is how transfer. Another example of heat transfer. The warmer object loses the thermal energy, it becomes cooler. As the cooler object gains thermal energy, it becomes warm. Okay? For example nga dito, yung kanyang example natin, the spoon in hot coffee getting hotter to the other end of the spoon. Okay? So, we know already na yung hot coffee, of course, mainit yan. Okay? So, yung malamig, yung mainit na molecules will transfer now. Doon, nag-start muna sa mainit, which is the hot coffee, going to the colder object, which is the spoon, metal spoon. Kaya ibabalik kayo at hawakan niyo yung metal spoon, mainit yung dulo. Because nga, nagkaroon ng transfer of heat. Another, okay? Energy will continue to move from one object to a cooler object until both have the same temperature. Until maging karoon ng equilibrium. Okay? So, yung energy will move yung warm object, yung warm object will going to move in a cooler object. So, mag-stop lang yung movement nila kapag pareho na sila ng temperature. And we call that one as state of equilibrium. Okay, when we say state of equilibrium, is state of balance. Natin balance, pareho na yung temperature nila. Okay? Okay, so let's check our knowledge. Is transfer of heat possible? Okay, you're going to answer this one. The high temperature, pumunta siya kay object 2. Na-transfer ba ang heat? What do you think is our answer? High temperature, pupunta kay low temperature. Is there a transfer of heat? Our answer is yes. Always remember that the heat transfer from high temperature going to a low temperature. Next, yung lechon. Napakasarap ito. Kaso nga lang, may mga virus ngayon yung baboy. Mahal. Okay? Ang tanong, is the transfer of heat possible? Our answer, of course, yes. Okay? So, yung mainit natin, yung high temperature natin, of course, sa fire. Yung low temperature natin, dito po sa baboy. So, itina-transfer niya yung heat. Okay? From very high temperature, which is the fire, going to the low temperature, yung mismo dun sa baboy. Okay, next. Si Olaf. So, anong nangyari kay Olaf kapag masyadong mataas ang temperature? Is the transfer of heat possible? Okay, Olaf is melting. Is it yes or no? Our answer is yes. So, si Olaf ay ice, cold. Okay, lower in temperature. And then we have the fire, what do you call this? The fireplace here. Okay, so mainit yan. So, ang temperature will travel from the fireplace going to Olaf. And then Olaf will melt. Let me melt siya. Okay, how about this one? The thermodynamics. Okay. So, yung object 1 will transfer to the object 2. And 3, and so forth. So, our answer is no. Okay, bakit kaya? Kasi they are in the state of equilibrium. O sinabi natin equilibrium kanina, okay, pareho na yung kanilang temperature. Okay, sabi ko nga kanina, magkakaroon lang ng heat transfer if magkaiba ang kanilang temperature. So, always remember, the movement of the heat is from high temperature, magmula sa mainit going sa low temperature sa malamig. Pero if there's a state of equilibrium, it means for state of equilibrium, equal na yung kanilang temperature. Therefore, wala nang heat transfer because it's already equal or a state of balance or the state of equilibrium. Okay, there are 3 ways on how heat transfer. It's either by conduction, by convection, or by radiation. So let's talk about it one by one. Okay, so when we say conduction, conduction is a transfer of heat by direct contact. Okay, if two objects direct contact with one another, so nagkakaroon ng conduction. Okay, in the process wherein the particles collide with other particles. Okay. So, for example, here, okay, the heat from the hot coffee makes the cup itself hot. Okay. So, alam natin kapag nagtitimpla kayo ng kape, eventually, pag ginawa ka natin yung side, mainit. Okay. Good example of this is conduction. Kasi nag-transfer yung heat directly nag-transfer dun sa cup. Okay. Another example, the metal spoon become hot from boiling water inside the cup. So, always remember, sabi natin, that the heat transfer from a high temperature to lower temperature. Ang high temperature natin is yung boiling water. Okay? So, since there is direct contact of boiling water and spoon, metal spoon, therefore, yung heat coming from the boiling water will transfer directly to the spoon. That's why if you're going to touch the end of the spoon after a few minutes, kapag iniwan niya siya, medyo mainit yung dulo. Therefore, nagkaroon na ng heat transfer. And that heat transfer is what we call the conduction. So, conduction because there is direct contact between two materials. Okay? In our example here, may direct contact yung mug at yung hot coffee. In our example naman here, there is direct contact, nagtama, okay, or nag-contact, nag-touch, or nag-collide yung two particles, okay, yung hot water and the spoon. Okay, conduction occurs most easily in solid and liquid. Always remember that conduction are very common in solid and in liquid. Okay, like for example, pag nag-iron, nag-plancha, okay, we all know already that yung iron is solid. So therefore, most especially this metal. So metals are good conductors of heat. So yung init na galing sa metal will transfer to the clothes. Okay? So, hot cook, yan. Yung sa, for example natin, yung sa coffee itself. Pareho lang siya ng hot cocoa. And then, the camp stove. Pag nagluto kayo, for example, nagsasaing kayo. So, there is direct contact between the fire and yung pot. Yung pot, yung lutuan. So, it is conduction. Okay? Snow is also part of example of conduction because you are directly touching. Look at this one. Yung this baby, nakatapak siya, tapos sinapakan niya yung snow. So, it is conduction. Why? Kasi, meron silang direct contact. The two materials, nagkaroon sila ng direct contact. And then, if nagkaroon ng direct contact, nagkakaroon ng collision of particles. Okay? So, that is one example or examples of conduction. Always remember that conduction is transfer of heat by direct contact. Kailangan there is direct contact between two materials. Okay. So why is conduction easier in solid and in liquid? Okay, the answer is that the conduction is easier for solid and liquid because of the arrangement of the molecules. Okay, for solid, we know already that in solid, the molecules are compact with one another. So if you're going to put other object na mainit, tapos ilalagay mo dun sa other solid object, mabilis siyang mag-transfer because yung init will easily transfer from one molecule to another. For solid, mabilis. Okay, same thing with the liquid. So in liquid, there's space between molecules. So, ibig sabihin, the heat can transfer from one molecule to another. Okay? But not in gas because the molecule are far. Ang distance ng molecule sa gas are very far from each other. So, matagal bago mag-transfer ng heat. So, atoms and molecules are closer together in solid and liquid. So, the particles need to move only a short distance before they bump into another and transfer energy. That is the reason why ang conduction is easier in solid and in liquid. As I said, because of the molecular arrangement of this matter. We know already kapag solid, dikit-dikit. So, yung init will transfer directly, okay, in a shortest time. Mag-transfer yung init from one molecule to another molecule. Same thing with the liquid. Okay, unlike with the gas. Sa gas kasi medyo malayo or malayong agwat ng molecule. It takes time for the heat to transfer. Okay? So, always remember that conduction is easy to transfer in solid and in liquid because of the arrangement of their molecules. Okay. So, mode of heat transfer, conduction, let's explain this one. Explain the movement of thermal energy in the picture. Sige nga, paano na-move yung thermal energy? Paano na-move ang heat in the picture? Sino dyan ang mas mataas ang temperature? Sino yung mababa? Kasi we know already that the heat transfer kapag there is uneven or imbalance of temperature. So, kailangan isa mainit, isa malamig. Okay? Yung mainit will transfer to the malamig. Okay? The hotter substance will transfer to the cooler substance. Yung malamig. Yung mainit, siya yung mabibigay i-transfer yung init going to the substance na mas malamig sa kanya. In our case, okay, so how can we explain this one? Okay, so our answer is that Faster moving molecules in your one hand bumps against the slower moving molecules in the ice. Thermal energy moves from your warmer hand to the colder ice. The slow moving of molecules in the ice move faster. So conduction happens because there is direct contact between your what do you call this? Your hand and the ice tube. So we know already yung hand natin is warmer, mas mainit. So the heat energy or thermal energy will transfer from our hands going to the ice tube. Kasi siya yung mas malamig, siya yung taga-receive ng init. So that is conduction. Okay? So mode of heat transfer is by means of conductors and insulators. So we know already that when we say conductors, these are the substances that transfer thermal energy very well. Okay? So most of the conductors are metals and solid. Okay? While when we say insulator, it is opposite of conductors. Kasi when we say insulators, these are the substances that do not transfer energy or thermal energy very well. Okay, tinatrap niya yung heat. Okay? Like for example, if you notice yung wire, di ba yung wire meron siya, copper wire kasi, meron yung wire natin, meron pa siyang plastic cover. Ang tawag natin doon is insulator. Kasi without the plastic or without the rubber cover, makukuryente kayo. Kasi, or may initan kayo because, sabi nga natin, conductors are good, it is used for transferring thermal energy. Okay? So, conductors are good in transferring heat. So, insulator naman, siya naman yung nag-prevent, okay, para makapag-flow yung heat. Like, for example, sa kawali, di ba may color black? Doon yung hinahawakan yung kawali. Hindi na papasok. So, yung black na yon, ang tawag na black plastic na yon or rubber na yon, we call that one as insulator because rubbers and plastics are good insulators. So, sabi natin insulators, hindi makakalabas or hindi makakapag-transfer yung heat. Okay? So, sabi naman natin conductors, ito naman yung nakakapag-transfer ng heat. Okay? Ng very well. Okay? So, if we don't have insulators, hindi mahahawakan yung kanyang pot. Or if we don't have insulators, pwede kayong mag-round. Okay? Because we know already, sabi nga natin kanina, as I repeat, conductors, okay, are the substance that transfer thermal energy very well. Okay, sila yung nakakapag-transfer ng heat. Okay, while insulators, they are the opposite of conductors. They are the one who not transfer energy. So, pinipigilan niya na mag-transfer yung heat, yung thermal energy. So, that is the difference between conductors and insulators. Okay, so we have here the list of common conductors. Okay, silver, copper, gold, aluminum, magnesium, tungsten, nickel, mercury, platinum, iron, graphite, and so on. So these are the conductors. So we have insulators. So we have oil, chlorophyll, wool, rubber, porcelain, glass, plastic, and so on. So these are the common insulators. Okay, examples of conduction. Okay, you have here the candle and you have the metal rod. Pag nilagay mo, kapag tinouch mo, okay, pag there is direct contact between metal rod and the, what do you call this? Okay, and the flame. And then ito yung metal rod. So there is direct contact. Na-touch nyo mismo yung, what do you call this? Yung light coming from the candle. Okay, so ang tendency, magta-transfer yung heat. Okay, so therefore there is an even temperature, mas mainit itong flame, tapos ito yung metal rod. So yung init ng flame will transfer on the metal rod. So we call that one as conduction. Another way around, itong baby, hinawakan niya itong pot. So kung mainit yung pot, okay, so mas mainit yung pot compared doon sa hand ng baby. So there is an even temperature. So, ang tendency, yung init will transfer from the pot going to the hands of this baby. So, papasok siya. Okay, same thing with this one. Okay, so nagluto siya. So, sabihin, baka wala itong insulators. So, wala siyang cover ng rubber or cover ng plastic. So, that's why, nung hinawakan niya yan, nagkaroon sila ng direct contact, napasok siya kasi na-transfer yung heat doon sa from pot going to the hand nung nagluluto na yan. Another. Okay, have here, di pa nagluluto kayo. So, yung heat, okay, will transfer from the burner going to the pot. So, there is direct contact. Okay, may contact yung two materials. So, therefore, it is conduction. Same thing with the swan. Yung bata, hawakan niya yung flat iron. So, we know already na yung flat iron is mainit. So, pag hinawakan niya ng hands, although mainit yung kamay ng bata, pero mas mainit yung flat iron. So, therefore, yung transfer ng heat is from flat iron going to the hands ng bata. So, that is conduction. Same thing with the spoon in the hot coffee. Okay? So we have, what we call this, natural reflexes ng katawan natin. So, every time na mapapaso tayo, natatanggal natin because we respond to a certain stimuli. So, we know already na kapag mainit, so, tinatanggal natin or nilalayo natin yung katawan natin. Okay? So, kasi we have stimuli. We respond to different stimuli in our surroundings. Next! So, we're done with conduction. So, there must be direct contact between two materials. And these two materials, kailangan uneven ang temperature. Isa mainit, isa malamig, so that it will transfer the heat. Okay, when we say convection is the flow of current in a liquid or in gas. Okay, so we know already in conduction, it's very common in solid and in liquid because of the arrangement of the molecule. In convection, okay, is opposite. So, si convection naman is very common in liquid and in gas. Okay, when we say convection, okay, so there is the current that created, okay? So, sabihin, yung warmer molecules, that is less dense, mas magaan. Kaya ang tendency niya is umakyat, pataas. Then, yung cooler substance, okay, so if the substance is cooler, bababa siya kasi it is denser, mas mabigat siya, kaya siya ay bababa. So, for example, sa takore, or for example, this one, nagbo-boil kayo ng water. So, yung liquid molecules, kapag malapit sa fire, sa burner, of course, mainit. So, ang tendency niya ay umangat because it will become less dense, magaan. Okay? Now, kapag the moment na lumabas siya or on the top, medyo nag-release siya ng gas, lumalamig, ang tendency naman yan is bibigat. It will become more dense. So, ang tendency niya ay babalik ulit sa ilalim. Okay, so of course, mainit na naman ulit, natataas na naman ulit. Okay, so the convection is a current created when the warmer, tandaan yung warmer, siya yung less dense, mas magaan, and the material that is more denser, yun yung malamig. Okay, kaya ang tendency niya ay to sink. Okay, so we have also example of convection is the convection current cause the movement of magma within the earth. So, imagine yourself na yung magma is parang yung tubig sa takore. Okay? So, kapag nainitan siya, ang tendency is to what? The molecule will become less dense. So, gagaan siya. Ang tendency, aakyat siya. Now, pati sa taas, medyo mag-release siya ng thermal energy na ilalamig. So, ang tendency now is to sink. Kasi, since siya ay bumaba ang temperature, okay, the tendency of the materials is to sink because it's getting more dense, bumibigat. Okay, that is the exact reason kung bakit yung mga plates natin, nagmo-move siya for about, I don't know if it's 5 or 10 centimeter, 5 centimeter every year. So, without any, actually, every day nagmo-move yung plates natin because of this convection current. Pero hindi lang natin nalalaman. Okay? Kaya there are some parts or some land na dati magkadikit, ngayon magkahiwalay na because of this convection current. Okay, siya yung papagalaw ng plates natin. Okay? Now, example of convection current is the sea breeze. So, we know already kapag during daytime, mas mabilis uminit ang land. I-discuss natin to during our fourth quarter lesson about breezes. So, during daytime, mas umiinit ang land. So, ang tendency, yung init, okay, is coming from the land, tataas. Kasi nga, sabi natin, pag mainit, it is less dense, magaan. So, ang tendency is to rise up. Okay? So, yung mainit na hangin or mainit na temperature will rise up kasi magaan siya. Now, yung cooler air na galing dun sa sea, mas mabigat siya. So, ang tendency niya is to sink. Okay? So, ang tendency, if this one, mataas siya, eventually, the air cools down, bibigat na naman siya bababa. So, yung cool air, hahanapin na naman ulit si warm air. Kung saan yung warm air, andun si cool air. Kasi nga nagkakaroon ng heat transfer. Okay? So, ang tendency, umiikot lang ng umiikot. Okay? Always remember, kapag mainit, ang tendency niyan is to rise up because it's getting lighter. Gumagaan siya. Now, kapag lumalamig, ang tendency is to sink because the molecule becomes dense. So, ang tendency niya ay umilalim or bumaba. Okay? Another example is the air conditioning. So, we know already na kapag sa air conditioning, di ba, ang warm air, ang cool air, ang tendency niya, since siya ay mabigat, pababa. Now, yung warm air from the surrounding will goes out, yung warm air becomes less dense and then it will rise up. Same thing, kapag nag-rise up siya, pataas, malalamigan ulit siya, ang tendency bababa. So, that is the reason why kung bakit yung freezer natin ay nasa taas. Okay? So, bakit kaya ang freezer sa mga ref? Bakit kaya ang freezer ay nasa taas? Walang freezer na nasa ilalim. Because, yung warm air, yung cool air from the freezer will go down kasi nga, mas mabigat siya, it will sink. Tapos, yung warm air dun sa ilalim ng freezer will rise up. So, lalamig ulit siya. And then, kapag lumamig siya, it will sink again. So, nagkakaroon ng rotation of air. You always remember, in convection, the higher the temperature is, okay, or the warmer the temperature is, ang tendency ni substance is to rise up. Now, kapag lumamig siya, since it becomes more denser, mas mabigat, ang tendency niya is to sink. Okay? So, that is the principle in convection. Same thing with the convection current. So, we know already na yung mga countries na malapit sa equator, okay, including the Philippines, okay, nakaka-experience yung gas natin dyan, okay, or yung water surface natin rises up. Okay. So, yung mga malamig na areas, ang tendency naman yan, ng air nila ay pababa. Kasi nga, ang cold air is more dense, mas mabigat. So, ang tendency is to sink. So, yung mga areas na malapit sa equator, mainit, ang tendency naman ng hangin nila is to rises. Okay? So, it rises out. Okay? Kasi nga, ang temperature or molecules or the, what do you call this? Okay? It becomes, what do you call this? Less dense. Okay? Naging mas magaan sila. So, ang tendency niya is to rises up. Okay, so yung cold air, since mabigat, it becomes more dense, and tendency is to sink. Okay, that is convection. Okay, so these are the example of convections. So when you boil water, as I said, kapag malapit sa init, ang tendency yan is to rises up. Since nasa taas na, mag-release na siya ng mag-release na siya ng other temperature, so lalamig siya, ang tendency is to cool down, magsisink. So, pag nainitan ulit, lalamig. Okay, yung lava lamp is also the same. And air conditioning. Okay. Another set of heat transfer is by means of radiations. Okay? Radiation is the heat transfer through space of electromagnetic wave. So we know already that in electromagnetic spectrum, we discuss aside from the visible light, so we discuss also the radiation. Okay? So your radiation or the ultraviolet rays is one example of radiation. Okay? Wherein the heat coming from the sun radiate to heats up the surface. Okay, so without touching, without anything. So remember that electromagnetic wave, it doesn't need any medium to transfer the energy. Hindi yan gumagamit ng solid, liquid, or gas. Okay, so kaya niya mag-transfer ng energy without using any type of media, okay, or medium. Okay, so sabi dyan, unlike conduction and convection, radiation can occur in empty space, in a vacuum, as well as in a solid, liquid, or in gas. So, waves such as visible light, infrared, and ultraviolet ray are examples of radiations. Okay, so kasi nga, uh, unlike with the convection and conduction, si radiation, hindi na kailangan gumamit ng any type of medium. So, kaya niya mag-transfer ng heat even without using any medium. Okay? Kaya for example, lumalabas kayo. You will notice, kung nakasombrero kayo, you will notice na mainit. Okay? Ibig sabihin, the heat transfer from the ultraviolet ray going to your cup. Kasi yung cup yung medyo malamig. So, nag-transfer na yung heat. Another example is that when you eat an ice cream. Okay? Di ba kapag kinakain yung ice cream, eventually pag sobrang init, nagme-melt because yung init coming from the ultraviolet rays, ang tendency niya is to melt down. Since yung ice cream is malamig, so transfer yung init from the ultraviolet rays going to the ice cream. Okay? So, ang tendency niya is to melt. Okay? So, these are the examples of radiation. Okay? Yung sun itself. Okay, yung campfire is also an example of radiation. Okay, radiation. Radiation is an infrared electromagnetic wave directly from the sun that warm the sidewalk of the wall and in the man. Okay, so we all know already kapag mainit, di ba? Sometimes kapag mainit, kapag ginawakan mo yung mga bahay yung iba to, pag ginawakan mo mainit. Because nga, the heat transfer from the sun going to the wall. Kaya mainit siya. There is an even temperature. Isa mainit, isa malamig. Okay, example of radiation. Okay, the heat from the sun. If you're going to use your microwave para iinit yung malamig na pagkain, it's also a type of radiation because microwave is part of electromagnetic wave. Okay, infrared. Ito yung for example sa mga McDo, 'di ba? Sa fries. So kaya nila i-maintain yung init. Okay? Because they have a heat lamp. Most especially the infrared heat lamps. And kapag nagbo-bonfire kayo, yung heat coming from the woods, yung fire, mag-radiate yan into your hand. So that is an example of radiation. Okay, solar radiation is very common. We know that already. Okay? I have here a sample of exercises. So I want you to look at the three images here and identify if it's convection, radiation, or conduction. Okay. Look at letter A. So yung letter A is just naman, nakaupo lang siya dyan, and this is the campfire. Tapos ito namang letter B, meron siyang wood. Ilagay niya dun sa, o sinunog niya yung wood dun sa kanyang fire, what do you call this? Dyan. And then, si letter C, turn on the fan and the warmest air is up near the ceiling. So, nung turn off niya yung fan, yung init ay nandun sa taas. And then, eventually, kapag umikot na, medyo lumalamig na sa ibaba. Okay. What do you think is our answer? Yes, our answer for letter A is radiation. Okay? Because there's no direct contact. It's just that the energy transfer from one material to another material. Si conduction naman is this picture because meron direct contact yung woods doon sa fire. Convection, because sabi niya kanina, okay, as you turn on the fan, the warmest air is up near the ceiling. So, kapag tinurn off mo yung fan, kapag tinurn on, okay, umikot yung fan, ang tendency is yung warm air pataas siya. Okay? So, therefore, yung cooler air, bababa. Kaya malamig. Kapag naka-electric fan, medyo malamig. Okay? So, that is the sample of, or the most different modes of heat transfer. Okay, for our activity, let's identify the type of heat transfer involved in the following example. Okay, cooling room with an aircon. So, yung aircon, di ba? Yung what do you call this? The warm air, since siya ay magaan, it rises. And then what do you call, the colder air, since siya ay mabigat, will sink, bababa. So, what type of heat transfer is that? Okay? For number 2, egg cooking in a frying pan. Kapag kayo ay nagluto ng itlog sa frying pan, ano kaya yun? Convection, conduction, radiation. Number 3, roof of the house becoming hot. Okay? Yung roof natin sa bahay, mainit. What type of heat transfer is that one? Number 4, sun heating up pavements. Number 5, walking on a hot sun. Number 6, warm air mass causing a weather change. Number 7, heating leftovers in a microwave. Number 8, a hot air balloon taking a flight. Remember that hot air balloon, gumagamit siya what do you call this? Parang burner sa inside, sa loob. So, di ba kapag gusto mong pataasin na nagmamaneuver ng hot air balloon, pinapalakas niya yung fire, yung apoy. Pero kung gusto niyo nang bumaba, binabawasan niyo yung apoy. Okay? Number 9, picking up hot coffee. Number 10, drives continental drift or the spreading of continents. Okay? So, for our answer, for number 1, it is convection. For number 2, it is conduction because there is direct contact between the egg or between the cooking pan, the frying pan, and the burner. So, it is conduction. So, roof of the house becoming hot is radiation. Okay, sun heating up pavement is radiation. Walking on a hot sun is conduction. There's direct contact between your foot and the hot sun. Warm air masses weather changes of convection. Heating leftovers in a microwave is radiation. A hot air balloon taking flight is convection. Okay, picking up the hot coffee is conduction. And for number 10, drives continental drift is convection. Okay, for your YouTube quiz number 3, so you're going to identify if it's conduction, convection, or radiation. The spoon in a hot bowl of soup. Is it conduction, convection, or radiation? Heat from the campfire. Conduction, convection, or radiation? Hot air balloon. Hot water rises in cold water. Girls sunbathing under the sun. Okay. Okay, for test 2, we're going to identify the different method of heat transfer in the given situation. So you're going to analyze situation, then identify if it's conduction, convection, or radiation. For number 1, Angelo grabs a coin from his pocket and it feels very cold to touch. After holding a few seconds, the heat from his hand is directly on the metal coin. Okay? So, nung nasa pocket niya malamig, hinawakan niya, naging mainit. So, what type of heat transfer is that? Conduction, convection, or radiation? Number 2, a spoon is left in a bowl of hot soup. The spoon gets hot. Okay? So, what is the type of heat transfer for that? Okay, number 3, Robbie feels his head and arms getting warm as he walks under the sun. So, nung naglalakad daw siya, naramdaman niya yung init ng araw. Okay? For number 4, Wendell loves the warmth from the fireplace circulating throughout the house. Okay? So, yung siguro, ang lugar ito, ang setup ito yung nagsusnow. May mga fireplace dun sa loob ng bahay. Okay, so nag-circulate yung init throughout the house. So what is that? The hot surface of the land hits the air above it and it becomes warm. So what type of heat transfer?